Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalists of Arlington.
We choose.
We choose.
We choose to be
A liberal religious community.
Welcoming.
Welcoming to all.
We encourage each other
on our spiritual journeys.
Support one another
through the changes in our lives.
And challenge the excesses
and injustices of our time.
Called to love.
To love.
To love.
And upheld by joy.
We live our faith.
First, I'm going to say some words about the Women's Alliance at First Parish. Each year, we set aside a worship service to pay tribute to the role of women in our congregation. Let's not forget that there was a time when women were not ministers, when they didn't sit on the parish committee, when they were not trustees, and when their opinions were often not respected. Over time, the women banded together, not only for fellowship, but also to gain some collective influence. Over time, the women, through dues, savings, and gifts, became financially independent from the budget of First Parish. In that way, the Alliance is unique from the other groups in our church. I'm embarrassed to say that I have this book by Charles Grady on my bookshelf for 25 years, and in the last month, I took a look at the chapters that said, "The Ladies of First Parish." In 1857, the parish committee had voted a resolution thanking the ladies for their gift of furniture for the vestry. It was not the first time, nor would it be the last of a long list of thank yous. He writes, over the years, the women of First Parish originated scores of supportive projects. No other group of parishioners could match them. Without their efforts, the story of this congregation would be both dismal and short. Today, the Women's Alliance continues to support First Parish by pledging to our stewardship campaign each year, by giving scholarships to youth for their service trip, and sometimes covering expenses to send youth to attend General Assembly and other workshops. And we continue to purchase or contribute to purchase concrete gifts, such as our beautiful mosaic, such as the chancel, such as the pulpit, such as the pews in the balcony, such as the audiovisual system in our vestry, such as painting the parlor, such as the furniture in the parlor, such as these beautiful wall hangings. The list goes on. And these are just our gifts to First Parish. Charles Grady goes on to say how the women ventured outside the congregation to support benevolent activities in the area. Today, the Alliance continues that outreach. When SNAP benefits were threatened and we worried that families would go without food, we dipped into our discretionary funds, and within that week, we gave a sizable gift to Arlington Eats and the Greater Boston Food Bank. And next year, as part of our budget, we will be acknowledging the work of our Reckoning and Repair group here at First Parish by supporting their partnership that they have developed with the Roxbury youth programs. And we will be doing that for 3 years. Our nominee the Cambridge Women's Center was chosen as our Giving First recipient for the month of April. We are glad to support them and draw attention to the good work that they have been doing since the 1970s. And I think a few of them are in our congregation today. I actually remember them from my consciousness-raising times long ago. This year, our trustees took a close look at our trust funds to see if our 3-year giving plan could be increased, particularly in the area of immigrant services. We want to use as much as we can for good in the world, but we also, of course, want to preserve those monies for the future. And I'm glad to say that this year we will be able to distribute over $18,000 to agencies that are local, such as the ARCS Cluster, national, such as Pink Haven, international, such as the UU Service Committee. And we continue our ongoing service partnership with Household Goods, the group that collects used furniture and other household items to be given to families in need. And we support them by, at the end of the Harvest Moon Fair, running around and collecting some of the leftovers that we still think are good enough to give to Household Goods, and also by an in-person afternoon of service that will happen on May 20th, where we will go there and do whatever they ask us to do. Fold sheets, count spoons, whatever. But this year, they reached out to us and said that they were low on inventory and asked if we could help out. They would supply a large truck and volunteers if we would host a donation drive. But where would we put a large truck? So we looked around and we longingly saw the beautiful parking lot at the St. Camilla's Church. And so we went to them and said, would you be interested in joining with us in a donation drive for Household Goods? And they said yes. So we are joining forces with the combined parishes of St. Camilla's and St. Agnes. And they work through the Society for St. Vincent de Paul. It's a lot to say. But we will be hosting a donation drive on the morning of June 6th at St. Camilla's. And you'll hopefully very soon have a lot of information about that. But for the last time, back to Charles Grady, he hints at the fact that women weren't always credited with the intellectual rigor required to discuss deeply religious matters, as if our brains sort of couldn't handle that level of interaction. But what did the women do? By the 1880s, they had started their own study groups. They certainly were interested in listening to the thoughts of each other. And they started inviting outside speakers using their own funds. Once again, that sense of independence. We have the money, we can pay for it, we're going to do it. Today, the Alliance continues this noble tradition with programs that provide opportunities for ongoing fellowship, like our Chowder Supper. Really, if you have not been to our Chowder Supper, you must come. We take care of, all gastronomic whatevers. Hearing from inspiring and thoughtful speakers, and fostering rich discussions. So formal membership in the Alliance is open to those in our church who identify as female, while Alliance activities are inclusive across all gender identities and ages. I urge you to consider joining us, even if you never come to a program or an Alliance dinner. Consider supporting the historical legacy of the women of First Parish and the good work that we continue to do in the world. There will be an Alliance table in the vestry coffee hour. In Eilert, our wonderful membership wizard will be there to talk to you about joining up. And on this Alliance Sunday, we have both a guest composer and a guest preacher. Hats off to Robin Baker from the Music Committee and Pamela Baldwin from the Alliance for imagining this dynamic duo. Dr. Russell refers to herself as a memorializer and will be sharing her thoughts on how we demonstrate our values through what is memorialized and commemorated in our communities. She is the author of Black Women Legacies and founder of the nonprofit of the same name. Her work on preserving the legacies of Black women may be looked upon this morning as resonating with the themes of the African American experience that Dr. Boykin's compositions also commemorate. Dr. Russell works as a public history consultant in a wide variety of settings, including university slavery initiatives. She recently served as the executive director of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail, and she is currently a research fellow at Harvard University. She will be joining us at coffee hour. Welcome, Dr. Russell, and we look forward to hearing from you later in the service.
I invite us now to take a moment to center ourselves and turn inward, to shift your body to whatever feels comfortable for you, to pay attention to your breathing, knowing it is the same air that our ancestors breathed, for we are indeed the breath of our ancestors. Spirit of our forebears, we give thanks for giving us life. In the midst of the hardships and challenges you faced, you persisted. May we similarly take on the mantle to continue the struggle for liberation and justice. Ancient wisdom, we draw from your organizing and strategizing experience. In humility, we learn from you the power of community building and of putting our thoughts together to dream a better world into being. Ancient calm, may we recognize that in the midst of our quest for freedom, we need to take time for self-care. May we find in this beloved community a place where we can recharge our spiritual energies, where we can lay our burdens down and rest for a while. For the next few moments and the next few breaths, let us continue to commune with our ancestors and with our sacred breath. May we honor the memory of the ones who have fought the good fight and caused good trouble.
Oh, greetings to you all. I'll try that again. Thank you very much for having me today. I am honored to be here, and I always like to begin my presentations. It's going to be a brief presentation and reflection versus a sermon, just to say that. But I always like to begin with a moment of gratitude, and I am so grateful for the work of the Women's Alliance. They are inspirational because they represent organizations and club women all over the country who are spurred by their faith to pour into their communities. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today and the inspiration for my research. So thank you to Andrea, all of the members of the Alliance, Pamela for helping to coordinate everything, and for the introduction, April, thank you so much for doing that as well. Robin. So excited for that and appreciative of the reverends and the ministerial staff who have been so kind to help us today. I love celebrating the work that we do when we come together. And Brittany Boykin, thank you for your beautiful music, very touching and inspirational. I love that it's inspired by Virginia Hamilton, who I love. The People Could Fly is one of my favorite stories and books that I have. So very fitting. All of it is very serendipitous to what we'll be talking about today, commemorating community, reflecting our values through memorials. Matthew 5:16 reads, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." I'm inspired today by that verse because it's a good reminder of the importance of service. The women that I write about in Black Women Legacies were women of faith who chose to create memorials to celebrate themselves and their acts of service. The women that established the Phyllis Wheatley Young Women's Christian Associations, the Sojourner Truth Clubs, and the Harriet Tubman House in the South End of Boston were African American women determined to let their light so shine so that their communities would thrive because of their good works. And in the process, they celebrated their own achievements in the face of seemingly impossible circumstances. They didn't need government funding or societal acceptance to embrace the Pan-Africanist tradition of call and response, or what many in the 21st century have coined hashtag say her name. African American women here in Massachusetts and all across the nation simply say the names of women like Phyllis Wheatley, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Harriet Tubman to celebrate their public memory. My book, Black Women Legacies, Public History Sites Seen and Unseen, chronicles a cadre of memorializers from the 1890s to 2023 who created a national network of memorials in African American communities. My research highlights named memorials during the Jim Crow era and traditional memorials like statues, house museums, and historical markers that flourished after the Civil Rights Movement. I've learned so many lessons from my research, but there is one that is so poignant for me, and that is how communities reflect their values through what they choose to memorialize. The people and the histories that we choose to highlight in public spaces or even in our church community often say more about us and those communities that create these memorials than the people who we're actually celebrating. African American women developed a robust and vibrant infrastructure of named memorials all over the United States through what I've coined as the culture of recognition, which is the simultaneous relationship between celebrating a namesake and celebrating oneself. I conceptualized this theory during writing about the most memorialized Black woman of the Jim Crow era, who in fact is Phyllis Wheatley. Today, I'd like to share a little about her memorial journey and the lessons that I've learned along the way. Just a little about Phyllis Wheatley. She was born around 1753 near the Gambia River in West Africa. She was kidnapped, enslaved, and bound on the Phyllis slave ship. And as a child, she was purchased directly from the docks of Boston by John Wheatley. So her name is derived from the slave ship from which she was bound, as well as her enslaver. And out of this comes such a wonderful and interesting history. John Wheatley's daughter, Mary, taught her to read the Bible, and within 16 months, Phyllis had mastered the English language. She also learned Latin, which she later incorporated into her famed writings and poetry, first published in 1767. Her first volume of poetry, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, was published in 1773, making it the first book published by a Black person in the United States. Wheatley wrote one of her most famous poems in 1775 about George Washington, which she mailed to him herself. Washington was so moved by her words, he invited Wheatley to a private meeting with him at his headquarters right here in Massachusetts, over in Cambridge. Having obtained her freedom in 1773, she married a free Black man named John Peters several years later and lived with him throughout the rest of her life. Despite international fame, her life was difficult, especially because she was unable to profit from her poetry. Though she spent the last years of her life as a free woman, she did live in poverty. Her writings, informed by her life experiences in the colonial era and during the formation of the United States, during the American Revolution, were really maintained their relevancy long after her death in 1784 and were instrumental in establishing the Black literary tradition in this country. The Norton Anthology of African American Literature boasts no single writer has contributed more to the founding of African American literature. Over a century after her death in the 1890s, African American women made her commemoration a conspicuous presence in their communities in every region of the nation. It was curious to me during this research as to why did this colonial enslaved woman resonate so deeply with these women living in a completely different world. And what I found was that African American women connected Wheatley's life story to their own experiences during the Jim Crow era. They connected with the her triumph over enslavement and illiteracy, the dissonance of democracy and freedom and sovereignty that she experienced in early America was still present for African Americans in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In a society that proclaimed liberty and justice for all, African American women understood that the rhetoric of equality was not intended for them nor for their communities. In the midst of many racialized and gendered discrimination, they intentionally created distinct public spaces to celebrate their achievements, choosing Phyllis Wheatley as the ultimate symbol of their capacity to be creative intellectuals and nurturing community caregivers. These club women, through the National Association of Colored Women, grasped that the symbolism of Wheatley name memorials was tied to the cultural norms of social respectability and used this concept to upbuild future generations. From organizations to commercial ventures to public memory, the sheer depth and range of name memorials established Phyllis Wheatley legacy as what I identify as a brand, used to signify Black womanhood and intellectualism. Though self-help and Christian morality and the embodiment of the NACW's motto, "Lifting as we climb," were central to Black women's clubs during the Jim Crow era, they also promoted a culture of recognition. By acknowledging organizational namesakes like Wheatley, as well as the contributions of African American women, they created public space to promote their legacies. The simultaneous recognition of both well-known and everyday heroines in African American communities made name memorials the primary public history medium of the era. Black women understood that name memorials of Wheatley were inseparable from the symbolism of respectable Black women. Their club work was not only important for their present circumstances, but was also used to upbuild. In other words, they reflected their own values and aspirations through their memorialization of women like Phyllis Wheatley. And by the turn of the 20th century, they were beginning to make a national name for themselves, prompting the expansion of the brand to all facets of Black life and culture. So while most of these name memorials were clubs, societies, literary societies, they were settlement houses or other community organizations, there were a few notable and distinct commemorations of her. One of them was the SS Phyllis Wheatley that was created by the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA used the Wheatley brand as an international moniker of freedom. Founded by Marcus Garvey, the UNIA was a Pan-Africanist organization established to promote Black economic and social liberation. Known as the Africa Ship on the UNIA's Black Star Line, the SS Wheatley's main route was planned to run from the United States to West Africa. Though the name ship never materialized, the UNIA memorialized her through the Phyllis Wheatley Hotel, which was their official headquarters in New York City. Another example is the Phyllis Wheatley Publishing Company that was established in September of 1925 to prepare, publish, and distribute reference books, textbooks, and other volumes of special interest and service to Americans of African descent. Though short-lived, the Phyllis Wheatley Publishing Company was one of the most significant capitalist ventures named after an African American woman in the Jim Crow era. Name memorials of Wheatley were so common by the 1920s that economic branding had become an extension of the work that Black club women had established decades earlier. Which leads me to my favorite name memorial to talk about, and that is Phyllis Wheatley Bread out of Detroit, Michigan. You can believe that. In the late 1930s, African-American businessman George Friley decided to venture into the baking business, and he formed the Phyllis Wheatley Bread Company. It was available in 7 varieties: rye, whole wheat, raisin, rolls, white sesame, tea biscuits, and brainiacs. And I have never been able to find exactly what brainiacs is, so if anybody knows that, see me after the service, please. A 16-ounce loaf sold for 10 cents. And, maybe you can get a loaf for under $5. You'd be doing good today. Lily Brooks, who was the mother of heavyweight champion Joe Louis, was made a spokesperson for this new brand. And in a lengthy ad, Brooks appealed to Black mothers about the nutritional and sociological value of Phyllis Wheatley bread. Not only was it marketed as the finest quality of loaf of bread on the market, but it was designated for any mother who desires to keep her children strong and healthy, because it was named after a great Negro woman and is an all-race product. Wheatley bread was marketed specifically to African American women's race and gender consciousness because of the powerful resonance of her name. The Wheatley home had existed in Detroit since 1897 and was still a vibrant philanthropic and social center for women in the 1930s. Wheatley bread evoked the philanthropic and social meaningfulness that was used to encourage Black consumers to support the brand. These examples showcase how impactful the legacy work of African American club women was beyond their communities. By reflecting their own values through the culture of recognition, these women spurred a national movement. Not only was Phyllis Wheatley and her accomplishments widely known, these women were pouring social services and hope into their neighborhood organizations and sustaining a national base of advocacy for the most vulnerable in their locales. In the 21st century, Phyllis Wheatley's commemoration teaches us another lesson about resilience and joy. The Boston Women's Memorial that is featured on the Boston Women's Heritage Trail on Commonwealth Ave contains a bronze statue of her by Meredith Bergman. Comprised of the features of several different Black women, it is reflective of her desire and the desire of other memorializers to showcase not only her achievement, but her humanity. Now commonly referred to as Phyllis Wheatley Peters, she is a wife, a mother, and a friend. Letters that surfaced at the Massachusetts Historical Society offer us deeper insight into who she was as a person. As more research is unearthed about the details of her life beyond enslavement, we are able to delve deeper into her personhood, which is indeed a reflection of our own desire to be seen as complex people whose lives, ideals, and contributions matter. New statues and publications in the last decade, like Honoree Fanon Jeffers' Age of Phyllis, a book of poetry, demonstrate that Black women have continued to be at the forefront of celebrating Wheatley's legacy and expanding its meaning for others. At Boston University in 2025, the collaborative efforts of students, faculty, staff, and administrators led them to name Wheatley Hall to Phyllis Wheatley Peters Hall, a significant shift in acknowledging her full identity and personal history. And just this past February, the U.S. Postal Service unveiled a new Black Heritage stamp based on the work of artist James Marshall that is also making a statement about who she was as a person. The choice to make her older and staring confidently towards the viewer requires onlookers to reconceptualize what they may know about her being the first Black person to publish a book in the U.S. and contend with the struggles she faced with being a free Black poet unable to survive off of the very thing for which she was famous. As our nation celebrates America 250 this year, it's not just a moment to embrace the values of democracy that we continue to fight for in every facet of our society, but it's also an opportunity for us to think about the inner lives of the people that we herald. As we continue to commemorate Phyllis Wheatley Peters and other Black women legacies in Massachusetts, I hope that we'll be inspired to think critically about freedom, democracy, citizenship, all while we celebrate with love and joy who we are and our lasting contributions. So my hope and my prayer for us today is that we join together to commemorate community while simultaneously recognizing ourselves in our quest to acknowledge the power of the past to inform our actions in the present. Thank you very much.